When the cowboy returned home, he found an Apache woman lying in his bed, and his life was never same. The sun was low in the sky when the cowboy finally saw his land again. After many long years on the cattle trails, the sight of the open plains and the small wooden house made his chest feel heavy. This place had once been his whole world. Now it felt almost strange, like a memory that had waited too long. He rode slowly, letting his tired horse choose the pace. The wind moved softly through the dry grass, and the sound reminded him of how quiet his life had become. He had spent years riding from one job to another, never staying long, never growing close to anyone. Work had been easier than feelings. Out on the trail, he only had to think about the next meal, the next herd, the next sunrise. There was no past chasing him there. His name was Eli Turner, a man known by few and remembered by fewer. He was not famous, not powerful, just steady and strong. Life had shaped him that way. Loss had done most of the shaping. Years ago, after his parents passed and the ranch slowly fell silent, he had left without looking back. Staying had hurt too much. Now he was back, older, quieter, and carrying more weight inside than he cared to admit. As he reached the edge of his land, Eli noticed something unusual. The gate was closed. He was sure he had left it open when he rode away years earlier. At first, he thought nothing of it. Wind could close a gate. Animals could move things. Still, the thought stayed with him as he rode closer. The house stood just as he remembered, simple, weathered, and alone. The porch steps were worn smooth by time. The roof sagged a little, but it was still standing strong. Yet something felt off. The air around the house did not feel empty the way he expected. It felt watched, almost held. Eli dismounted and tied his horse to the fence. His boots pressed into the dirt, leaving clear prints. He paused, listening. No sound came from inside. No voices, no movement, only the soft whistle of wind. He walked toward the porch, each step slow and careful. His hand rested near his belt, more from habit than fear. He had faced storms, wild animals, and rough men. A quiet house should not trouble him. Still, his heart beat faster than it had moments before. When he reached the door, he noticed marks near the handle. They were small, like scratches, fresh. His brow tightened. Someone had been here, recently. Eli pushed the door open. The inside of the house smelled different. Not bad, just not empty. There was a hint of smoke, like a small fire had been used. Dust had been disturbed. The table had been moved slightly from where he remembered it. A cup sat near the sink, cracked but clean. He stepped inside fully now, closing the door behind him. His eyes moved slowly across the room. Nothing was broken. Nothing looked stolen. In fact, the place felt cared for. That confused him even more. If someone had come here to steal, they would have taken something. But everything was still there. His old chair, the shelf with a few books, even the worn blanket folded near the fireplace. A strange mix of feelings filled his chest. Surprise, caution, and a touch of something he could not name. "Hello," he called out. His voice sounded louder than he expected. It echoed softly off the wooden walls. No answer came. Eli moved farther into the house. His steps were quiet now. He passed the small kitchen area and paused near the hallway that led to the bedroom. The air felt warmer there, like someone had been sleeping. That made his grip tighten. This was his private space. No one had ever been here except him. The idea that someone had used it made him uneasy, yet he felt no anger, only a deep need to understand. He walked down the hall slowly. At the bedroom door, he stopped. The door was slightly open. Light from the window spilled into the hall, and he could see the edge of his bed. His heart pounded. Every instinct told him to be careful. Still, he pushed the door open. For a moment, his mind struggled to understand what his eyes were seeing. Someone was lying on his bed. It was a woman. She was not dressed like anyone he had known from nearby towns. Her dark hair spread across the pillow, tangled and loose. Her clothes were worn and dusty, clearly traveled in. One arm rested across her body, and her breathing was slow but uneven. She looked exhausted, weak. Eli froze. He did not speak. He did not move. His thoughts raced faster than a wild horse. Who was she? How did she get here? Why his house? Then he noticed her face more closely. She was Apache. He recognized it from stories, from brief encounters on the trail, from the careful way people spoke when mentioning the Apache people. Fear often followed those stories, but what he saw now was not fearsome. It was pain. A dark bruise marked her temple. Her hands were scraped, fingers swollen. She looked like someone who had run for days without rest. Eli swallowed hard. This was not what he expected when he came home. He had imagined silence, dust, maybe loneliness. He had not imagined a wounded stranger sleeping in his bed. For a brief moment, he considered turning around and leaving, riding away, letting this problem belong to someone else. That was what the old Eli would have done: avoid, escape, survive alone. But he did not move. Something held him there. The woman shifted slightly, letting out a soft sound like she was trapped in a bad dream. Eli took a cautious step closer. He could see now that her breathing was shallow. She was alive, but just barely holding on. He looked around the room. A small bowl of water sat on the floor. A cloth, damp and folded, lay on the bedside table. She had cared for herself as best she could, or someone else had helped her. But there was no sign of anyone else. Eli felt the weight of the moment settle on him. Whatever had happened before, whatever danger followed this woman, it had now reached his door. He stood there for a long time, listening to her breathe, feeling the past and future pull at him from both sides. His quiet life was already broken. He knew that deep down. Slowly, he reached for the chair near the bed and sat down. He kept his distance, not wanting to scare her if she woke. His eyes stayed on her face, not with fear, but with concern. He did not know her name. He did not know her story, but one thing was clear. From the moment he opened that bedroom door, his life had already changed. And there was no turning back. Eli stayed seated beside the bed for a long time after making his decision. The woman slept lightly, her breath uneven, as if pain followed her even into rest. Outside, the light slowly faded and the room filled with soft shadows. The silence felt heavy but not empty. It felt like something important was waiting to happen. At last, the woman stirred. Her eyes opened suddenly, sharp and alert, as if she had been trained to wake quickly. When she saw Eli sitting nearby, her body tensed. She tried to sit up, but pain stopped her. A quiet sound escaped her throat, half surprise and half fear. Eli lifted his hands slowly, palms open, showing he meant no harm. He spoke gently, keeping his voice low and calm. "You're safe," he said. "I won't hurt you." She did not understand his words, but she understood his tone. Still, her eyes followed every small movement he made. She pulled the blanket closer around herself, as if it were a shield. Eli leaned back slightly, giving her space. He pointed to himself. "Eli," he said slowly. She watched him, then looked away, as if unsure whether to trust him. After a moment, she pointed to herself and spoke a single word in her own language. Eli did not understand the sound, but he nodded, accepting it as her name. For a while, they sat in silence, studying each other like strangers standing at the edge of two worlds. Eli noticed how thin she was, how tired her eyes looked despite their strength. She looked like someone who had not rested properly in a long time. Carefully, Eli stood and walked toward the kitchen. She followed him with her eyes, tense again, but did not try to move. He poured water into a clean cup and brought it back, placing it on the small table near the bed. He stepped back and waited. After a moment, she reached for it with shaking hands and drank slowly. Relief crossed her face, just for a second, before she hid it again. Eli felt a small sense of relief himself. At least she trusted him enough to drink. As the night deepened, Eli lit a small lamp. The soft light filled the room with warmth. He pointed gently to the marks on her head and hands, then made a questioning motion. She understood what he was asking, even if she did not understand the words. Her face changed. Pain, sadness, and fear passed through her eyes like moving clouds. She shook her head, then turned her face away. Eli did not push. Some stories could not be told with words, and some wounds were too fresh. He brought a bowl of warm water and a clean cloth. Slowly, carefully, he cleaned the dirt from her hands. She flinched once or twice, but did not pull away. His touch was steady, respectful, never rushed. This was not the life Eli had planned. Only hours ago, he had imagined eating a quiet meal and sleeping alone. Now, he was tending to a stranger who had crossed his path for reasons he could not yet understand. Later, when she fell asleep again, Eli moved to the chair by the window. He did not sleep. His mind was too full. Questions chased each other in his thoughts. Why had she come here? Who was she running from? Would they come looking for her? He knew enough about the land to understand that nothing happened by accident. A woman like her did not simply appear in a lonely ranch house unless she had no other choice. Near dawn, Eli heard a sound outside. It was faint, but clear enough to make him alert. He rose quietly and stepped onto the porch. The air was cool and the sky was just beginning to change color. He scanned the land carefully. No riders, no movement, just the wide open plains and the sound of birds waking up. Still, his sense of danger did not fade. When he returned inside, the woman was awake again. She was sitting up now, though clearly weak. She watched him with a look that was calmer than before, as if some small trust had formed overnight. Eli nodded at her and tried a gentle smile. He pointed to the chair, then to himself, then made a sleeping motion. He was trying to explain that he had watched over her through the night. She studied him for a long moment. Then slowly she gave a small nod. The morning passed quietly. Eli prepared simple food and placed it where she could reach it. She ate slowly, carefully, like someone who had gone without proper meals for too long. He noticed how she saved a small piece, hiding it in her clothing. Old habits of survival were hard to break. As the sun rose higher, Eli realized something important. If anyone saw her here, trouble would follow. People in nearby towns were afraid of what they did not understand. Rumors could spread fast, and fear often turned into cruelty. He needed to protect her. He walked outside and checked the path leading to the house. He brushed away footprints, erased signs of recent movement, and made sure nothing looked unusual. It felt strange to hide the truth on his own land, but it felt necessary. When he returned, the woman was watching him again. This time her eyes held something new: gratitude. She placed a hand over her chest and bowed her head slightly. It was a simple gesture, but it struck Eli deeply. He nodded in return, unsure how else to respond. As the day went on, she grew a little stronger. She stood briefly, leaning against the wall for support. Eli stayed nearby but did not touch her unless she reached for help. He understood that trust took time. They began to communicate in small ways, a gesture for water, a look toward the door, a shared glance when a sound came from outside. Slowly, a quiet understanding formed between them. By evening, clouds gathered in the sky and the wind picked up. Eli secured the windows and doors, his movements careful but calm. The woman watched him, then moved to the corner of the room where she could see both the door and the window. It was clear she was used to being alert. As darkness fell again, Eli felt the weight of what lay ahead. Keeping her safe would not be easy. Letting her go would be worse. He sat down across from her, the lamp between them. For the first time, he spoke more than a few words, even though he knew she could not understand. He told her about the ranch, about the years he had been away, about the quiet life he had tried to build. She listened, not to the words, but to the feeling behind them. Outside, the night stretched wide and uncertain. Inside, two strangers shared a fragile moment of peace. Neither of them knew what tomorrow would bring, but both understood one thing clearly. Their paths had crossed for a reason, and whatever danger followed, they would face the next day changed by this unexpected bond. The next few days passed slowly, like time had decided to move with care. The woman grew stronger with each sunrise, though she was still weak and tired. Eli noticed small changes that gave him hope. She walked a little farther each day, her hands stopped shaking as much, and her eyes no longer carried the same heavy fear they had when she first woke up in his bed. They spoke very little, but somehow they understood each other more with every hour. When Eli brought food, she thanked him with a nod or a quiet look. When he stepped outside to work, she watched from the window, always alert, always aware of the land around her. Eli returned to small ranch duties he had once known by heart. He fixed broken boards, checked the fence, and cleaned the old barn. It felt good to work with his hands again. The land remembered him, and in a way, he remembered himself too. Still, his mind never fully rested. Each time he heard a sound beyond the wind, he looked up. Each time a bird flew suddenly from the grass, his hand paused. He knew danger could come without warning. The woman noticed this. One afternoon, while Eli repaired a fence near the house, she stepped outside for the first time. She moved slowly, leaning on the doorframe. The sunlight touched her face, and for a moment she closed her eyes, breathing deeply, as if the open air gave her strength. Eli turned and saw her standing there. His first instinct was to rush to her side, but he stopped himself. She needed to feel control over her own steps. He only watched, ready to help if she asked. She took a few careful steps into the yard and looked around. Her eyes moved across the land, reading it in a way Eli could not. She noticed distant hills, hidden paths, and places where someone might approach unseen. She pointed toward the trees far from the house and spoke softly in her language. Eli did not understand the words, but he understood the meaning. Someone had come from that direction. His chest tightened. He nodded, showing he understood. He pointed toward the house, then made a small circle with his hand, asking how many. She held up 2 fingers, then paused and added a third. 3. Eli exhaled slowly. That was enough to confirm his fear. People were looking for her. That night, Eli moved the horse into a hidden space behind the barn and covered tracks carefully. He closed all the shutters and kept the lamp low. The woman sat quietly, her back straight, her ears sharp to every sound. The silence felt heavier than before. In the darkness, Eli realized something important. This was no longer just about helping a stranger. This was about choosing a side. By letting her stay, he had already made that choice. Before dawn, the sound of distant hoofbeats reached his ears. It was faint but real. Eli's body tensed. He moved to the window and peered through a narrow gap. 3 riders approached slowly, scanning the land. The woman saw his face change and understood immediately. She stood, though her legs shook slightly. She reached into her clothing and pulled out a small object wrapped in cloth. It was simple but clearly important to her. She pressed it into Eli's hand. He looked at it, then back at her. He shook his head gently and pushed it back toward her. He did not want payment. He did not want ownership. He wanted her safe. The riders stopped near the fence. Their voices carried through the air, low and tense. Eli could not hear their words clearly, but he could feel the danger in them. One of them rode closer to the house. Eli stepped outside before they could reach the door. He stood tall, calm, and steady, as if nothing were wrong. Years on the trail had taught him how to face men without showing fear. The rider looked him over slowly. "You live alone?" the man asked. Eli nodded. "Always have." The rider's eyes moved to the house. "Seen anyone pass through?" Eli shook his head. "Just dust and wind." The man studied him for a long moment. Eli did not look away. His face stayed calm, his body relaxed, but his heart beat hard inside his chest. After what felt like forever, the rider turned away. He spoke to the others briefly, then they rode off, disappearing into the open land. Eli waited until they were gone before returning inside. The woman was standing exactly where he had left her. Her shoulders dropped when she saw his face. Relief softened her eyes. They shared a moment of quiet understanding. No words were needed. Later that day, she spoke more than she ever had before. Though Eli could not understand the language, he listened closely. Her voice rose and fell with emotion. She pointed to the distance, to the sky, then to herself. He understood enough. She had lost her home. She had lost her family. She had been running not just from danger, but from grief. Eli felt a deep ache in his chest. Loss was a language he understood well. That evening they sat outside as the sun set. The land glowed with warm colors, and for the first time since her arrival, the woman smiled. It was small and brief, but it felt powerful. Eli realized something then. This place was no longer just his home. It had become a shelter. As the stars appeared, the woman drew symbols in the dirt with a stick. She showed him stories of her people, of journeys and survival. Eli watched, learning not with words, but with heart. The bond between them grew stronger, not through touch or promises, but through shared danger and shared silence. Yet Eli knew the truth. The riders would return, and when they did, choices would have to be made that could change everything. As the fire burned low and the night deepened, Eli stared into the flames and understood one clear thing. His life had already crossed a line it could never uncross. And whatever came next, he would face it standing beside her. The warning signs did not stop after that day. Even though the riders had gone, the land no longer felt calm. Eli sensed it in the way birds lifted suddenly from the grass, in the way the wind seemed to carry sounds farther than before. Trouble had brushed past his door once, and it rarely came only once. The woman also felt it. She stayed closer to the house now, always aware of her surroundings. Her strength continued to return, but so did her restlessness. Eli could see it in her eyes. She did not want danger to fall on him because of her. One morning, just after sunrise, she packed her few belongings. Eli noticed quietly. He watched her fold the cloth, tie it carefully, and place it over her shoulder. Her movements were calm but firm. She had made a decision. Eli stepped forward and shook his head. He pointed to the land, then to the house, then to himself. He wanted her to stay. He wanted to protect her. She looked at him for a long moment, then shook her head slowly. She pointed toward the distant hills and made a cutting motion across the air. Danger. Then she pointed at him and pressed her hand to her chest. Care, concern. She was trying to tell him that staying would put him at risk. Eli felt frustration rise, not at her, but at the situation. He walked outside and pointed to the open plains, then spread his arms wide. There was nowhere safer than this. He had lived here all his life. He knew the land better than anyone. She hesitated. Before either of them could say more, a distant sound reached their ears. Hooves, fast this time. Both of them froze. Eli moved quickly. He guided her toward a hidden space beneath the floorboards near the back of the house. It was an old storage area his father had built long ago. Few people knew it existed. He pressed a finger to his lips, then closed the boards carefully over her. Moments later, riders appeared at the edge of the land, more than before. Eli stepped outside again, calm but ready. His heart beat hard, but his face showed nothing. The men rode closer. Their eyes searched everything, the house, the barn, the ground. They dismounted without greeting. One of them spoke sharply, accusing without proof. Eli answered slowly, clearly. He told them he lived alone. He told them no one had passed through. They did not believe him. Two of the men began to search the area. One moved toward the barn. Another circled the house. Eli stayed where he was, steady and unshaken. Then one of the riders noticed disturbed dirt near the fence. Eli knew the moment was coming. Before they could move closer to the house, Eli spoke again, louder this time. He told them to leave his land. His voice was firm, backed by years of survival and strength. The men paused. They were not used to being challenged. Tension filled the air. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, from the distance, a sharp sound echoed. It was not loud, but it was enough to distract them. The men turned, confused. Eli did not waste the moment. He stepped forward, commanding their attention, repeating his demand. His certainty unsettled them. After a tense exchange, the riders mounted their horses again. They left with warning looks, promising they would return. Eli waited until they were gone before moving. When he lifted the floorboards, the woman emerged slowly. Her face was pale, but her eyes were strong. She touched his arm lightly, gratitude and worry mixed together. This time, she did not argue when Eli led her back inside. That night, neither of them slept. They sat across from each other, the lamp between them. The truth stood silently in the room. She could not stay forever. Eli understood that now. In the quiet hours before dawn, she told him more of her story through gestures and broken words. Her people had been forced to move. Trust had been broken. She had escaped violence, not looking back, carrying only memories and pain. Eli listened. He did not interrupt. He knew what it meant to lose a home, to feel like the world had no place for you. When she finished, she placed her hand on the floor between them, palm down. Then she placed his hand beside it. Different hands, same ground. The message was clear. They were different, but this moment had joined them. As the sun rose, Eli made a decision. He would help her reach a safer place, farther than the riders would expect. He knew hidden paths, old trails few people used. It would be dangerous, but staying was worse. She resisted at first, not wanting him to risk so much. But Eli was firm. This was his choice now, not just hers. They prepared quietly. Eli packed food, water, and supplies. He chose a horse strong enough to carry her when needed. Before leaving, he looked once more at the house. He did not know if he would return. They left just after sunset, moving carefully, avoiding open land. The stars guided them. The woman rode behind Eli at first, then on her own when she felt strong enough. They spoke little. The journey demanded focus. At one point, they had to hide as riders passed close by. They lay still, barely breathing, the earth cold beneath them. In that moment, Eli understood how fragile life truly was. When the danger passed, they continued. Near dawn, they reached a place where the land changed. Trees thickened and paths split in many directions. The woman stopped there. She turned to Eli, her eyes filled with emotion. This was as far as he could go safely. She removed the small object she had tried to give him before and placed it gently in his hand this time. He did not refuse. She pressed her forehead lightly against his shoulder, a gesture of deep respect. Then she stepped back. Eli watched as she disappeared into the trees, her figure fading with the morning light. The journey back felt longer. When Eli returned to his ranch, it felt emptier than ever before. But it was not the same emptiness he had known before. It was the kind that comes after something meaningful has passed through your life. He stood on the porch as the sun rose higher, knowing one truth clearly. Even though she was gone, the man he had been before would never return. And whatever the future held, it would be shaped by the choices he had made when it mattered most. Days passed after the woman left, but time felt different to Eli now. The ranch was quiet again, just as it had been when he first returned, yet the silence no longer felt empty. It felt full of memories, of moments that still moved through his mind like slow shadows. Each morning, Eli woke before the sun. He stepped outside and looked toward the trees where she had disappeared. He did this without thinking, as if part of him still expected to see her walking back across the land. But the plains remained still, offering no answers. He returned to his work, fixing fences, tending the horse, and caring for the land. His hands stayed busy, but his thoughts often drifted. He remembered her alert eyes, the quiet strength in her movements, and the way she had trusted him when the world had given her no reason to trust anyone. At night, he sat by the fire alone. The house felt larger now, filled with echoes of footsteps that were no longer there. He found the small object she had given him tucked safely in his pocket. He did not know its full meaning, but he understood its value. It was not just an object. It was a reminder of courage, survival, and a bond formed without promises. One evening, as the sky turned deep orange, Eli noticed something on the horizon. Dust, slow, careful movement. His body tensed, old instincts waking instantly. He watched closely. It was not riders this time. It was a small group on foot. Eli waited, standing still, ready but calm. As they came closer, he saw who they were. Members of the woman's people. Their faces were cautious, their steps measured. They stopped at the edge of his land. One of them stepped forward. Though words were few and broken between them, understanding passed clearly. They were not there for trouble. They were there because of her. She had spoken of him. They told him, through signs and simple words, that she had reached safety. She was healing among her people. She had not forgotten the man who had helped her when she had nowhere else to go. Eli felt something loosen in his chest, something he had been holding tight for too long. Before leaving, one of them placed a hand over his heart and nodded deeply. Respect. Gratitude. When they walked away, Eli stood there for a long time, watching until they were gone. The land felt lighter somehow, as if a heavy chapter had finally found its ending. Life continued. Seasons changed. The dry heat gave way to cooler winds. Grass shifted color. The ranch slowly came back to life under Eli's steady care. He repaired the house fully this time, not because he planned to leave again, but because he planned to stay. People from nearby towns began to pass through occasionally. Eli was no longer the quiet man who avoided all contact. He spoke when spoken to. He helped when needed. Something inside him had opened. One afternoon, a young boy asked him why he lived so far from everyone else. Eli thought for a moment, then smiled softly. "Because this land teaches you who you are," he said. Months later, as spring returned, Eli noticed a familiar figure at the edge of the trees. He did not move at first, afraid his eyes were playing tricks on him. But she stepped forward into the light. She looked stronger now. Healthier, her posture was steady, her eyes calm. She was not running anymore. Eli walked toward her slowly, not wanting to break the moment. They stood facing each other, words still unnecessary. Everything that needed to be said lived in the space between them. She had returned not out of fear, but out of choice. She gestured toward the land, then toward herself, then toward him. A question. Eli nodded. This time she did not stay as someone hiding. She stayed as someone who belonged. Their lives did not suddenly become easy. There were challenges, misunderstandings, and moments of distance. But there was also respect, patience, and shared purpose. Together they built something quiet and strong. Years later, people would speak of the ranch where different worlds met, where kindness changed the path of two lives. Some would say it was fate, others would say it was courage. Eli knew the truth. It was a choice, the choice to help instead of turn away. The choice to stand firm instead of run. And because of that choice, the cowboy who once returned home alone had found a life richer than he ever imagined. And he was never the same again.